This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on a church with a mandate. Get it on and welcome to the best 15 minutes or so in the universe. It's Beyond the Reasonable Doubt. Mark Garrigus is on his way to where, Mark?
I'm on my way to the airport, going to Denver. I've got a hearing or an arbitration with the NFL tomorrow, which we'll talk about on the big show later this week.
Why Denver?
It's against the Broncos, so couldn't be happier to go there and kick a little Denver Bronco ass.
Is Barrel Man going to be there?
Yes, of course.
For those who don't remember, there was a guy who just dressed up in cowboy boots, a cowboy hat, and a barrel with suspenders.
He had suspenders, exactly.
Yes.
I was going to say, I don't remember the barrel as much as I remember the suspenders.
Well, you got to hold the barrel up. And he sadly passed a number of years ago, but he was one of the mascots that was always around Denver. All right, so what's in the news?
Well, I think everybody wants to hear your take. I'm sure you've done it on ACS, but for those RD or BARD listeners who don't listen to ACS and should, your take on whether comedians, you could just walk up to a comedian and slap the shit out of him while he's on stage, let alone when millions are watching.
Well, it's sort of the slippery slope thing that you do have to worry about. If we're going to say words hurt and that's hate speak and you put people's lives in danger when you say these things, then there's the next logical conclusion of that is, well, then why can't you slap the shit out of someone who's saying something that's hateful or could put people in danger? But we're dealing with this a lot. Like you think about Tucker Carlson says something about Ukrainian labs where they're testing bioweapons, and then you turn on the news the next day and you have a bunch of heads of the CIA saying that's treasonous talk. Well, treason is punishable by death. So if you're going to say that's treasonous, then why shouldn't somebody take matters into their own hands, or that person is Hitlerian? Well, we all wish we could have killed Hitler in 1939. That would have been awesome. So there is a element of this which is a kind of a slippery slope. Like if you're going to label things dangerous or Hitlerian or say that this guy's a mouthpiece for the Kremlin or something, then you are kind of begging the next question was, well, how do we get him to stop?
Well, you got to take him out. Regime change, or as the president says, we got to take him out of power. It's interesting because I'd like to clear up a couple of things. First of all, for those who have been saying that the joke was in poor taste, they don't blame Will Smith for smacking him. That's not a defense to a criminal charge if one was brought. For those who are saying, well, why aren't criminal charges brought? It was not a felonious hit because, first of all, it could have been, I suppose, if the injury had been, when Will Smith had smacked him, if he had fallen backwards, hit his head, and knocked out. I mean, I've had that case, and I've had cases that ended up, unfortunately, in serious injury and death, and they charged murders or manslaughters, depending in those cases. But in this case, it was a misdemeanor at best, even though millions of people were watching it. If Chris Rock says, I don't want to press charges, LAPD is not going to, on their own, prosecute something like that. However, with the one caveat, the city attorney who has jurisdiction over misdemeanors in Los Angeles is a guy by the name of Mike Fewer. Who's, by the way, running for mayor of the city. He's so screwed up the city attorney's office in LA the last 4 years. He wants to get a promotion to mayor. He's got zero chance of winning. But if he wanted to get some kind of traction or something, I suppose he could grandstand and file charges, but it's not likely.
So then what is the threshold? Because famously years ago, John Stossel, the reporter, was talking to a pro wrestler, and he told him wrestling was fake, and the guy yelled, "Do you think this is fake?" And he went upside his head with an open hand, but I think he ruptured his eardrum and knocked Stossel to the ground. He actually did it twice, I believe. So obviously that is an assault there. There was damage. There was damage. Now, is it simply that Chris Rock did not sustain damage? If he'd punctured, if his open hand hit his ear, an inch and a quarter further down his head, and it caused some disruption to his hearing or damage to his eardrum, is that then cross the threshold for charges being brought?
Had the case where a young man was at a concert in downtown LA, and he saw his, I think it was ex-girlfriend, making out with another guy on the dance floor, punched him, I think got a ruptured eardrum and a broken jaw, and he was charged with a felony. You break a bone or do some kind of damage, you're going to generally get a felony charge. And the interplay is, does the complaining witness / victim want to press charges? And so that's what's going to kind of determine whether or not the cops are going to do something, and combined with what kind of injuries are sustained. In this case, presumably no injuries were sustained. By the way, Will Smith, who played Muhammad Ali, I don't know what kind of slap that was, but Chris Rock took it, and he just, like a Timex, just kept on ticking and didn't really miss a beat. And some of the people had said if it was Dave Chappelle, he would have probably. But Chris Rock's already, I think, sold out a lot of tickets on his tour. And by the way, there's a lot of people who are asking whether this thing was staged, which I thought was kind of interesting, if you ask me.
Yeah, I don't believe that. You broke up when you said if it was Dave Chappelle, so maybe you can finish that thought, although you've just frozen up again.
No, yeah, I said if it was Dave Chappelle, I don't.
The part I like about technology, it's around long enough. It's good enough for him to rephrase the question one more time, and then it cuts out. Yes, I will say that Chris took that shot like a champion. He should go by Chris Rock E. Graziano. Deep dive into a famous boxer from the 40s.
I think that deserves a sniff.
Deep dive. Mark, hopefully we have a good enough connection for you to appreciate my Rocky Graziano reference.
I got your Rocky Graziano, and he certainly does not have a glass jaw, so to speak. You, as a former boxer, can appreciate that, right?
I do. Now, what were your thoughts about Dave Chappelle?
I was thinking if he had smacked Dave Chappelle, I would have expected Dave Chappelle to have reacted differently than Chris Rock did. I don't know, Dave, but I just have that suspicion. What about you?
Yeah, I do. And he's also a bigger in stature kind of guy. But so in the eyes of the law, he was not injured and does not want to press charges, so they can keep walking unless somebody wants to grandstand this thing and make something of it.
Correct. But that does not mean that there isn't civil liability, meaning money exchanging hands. You can see where conceivably, theoretically, that could happen. I also and maybe we can end it before I lose my connection here. What if given your training and your background as a boxer, what if he'd come up to smack you? You think you would have blocked it, or do you think you would have counterpunched? What would you have done?
I don't think in that context I would have, because it would have been so out of left field versus somebody yelling at you at a bar or something. I will tell people, and I've always told people, do not worry about the front hand, worry about the backhand. Folks, Do not worry about that lead hand. You're never going to get jabbed. It's always going to be the right overhand. So keep your eye out for the right hand. Nevertheless, left, especially in a bar setting or a party or where there's booze traveling around or the stage of the Academy Awards, they always come with their dominant hand. And if you do get hit first with the front hand, with the left hand, the weak hand, fucking run. Because if that guy starts that fight out with his bad hand, that means his bad hand ain't so bad. It's probably pretty good. And that means there's a lot more waiting in the right. So if the guy starts a fight with you and he throws a jab or an uppercut with the lead arm, get out of there. Give me 3 steps, mister, like the great... Yes, right. Not the Allman Brothers, but sorry, that was a little off air there. This, Leonard Skinner would say. So, time for another story. In the news?
There's a couple of other stories. Gary, what's your lead one? I mean, one would be, I suppose, Judge Carter down in Santa Ana, who was a federal district court Article 3 judge, made a finding yesterday in the case involving John Eastman that it was more probable than not that Trump had engaged in criminal conduct with John Eastman. He did that in order to pierce, if you will, the attorney-client privilege that John Eastman was asserting on behalf of communications with Trump. And there's, people on my side of the aisle have been very excited about this. They've been breathless about it. And by the way, Judge Carter, who I appeared in front of both when he was in state court and federal court and had many or a frequent case in front of, is a wonderful judge. And very well respected. But at the end of the day, in terms of whether this amounts to anything, it amounts to absolutely nothing in terms of whether the Department of Justice is going to use it. They can't use this judicial finding as to anything, and they're not going to, in my humble opinion, use it as to anything. So if you turn on certain cable channels, they're breathless about it, about the import of this. While it has a great effect for the January 6th committee, it has virtually no effect for the Department of Justice.
What do you think about, speaking of January 6th, some of those people still incarcerated? And I don't know how many, but it doesn't get covered much in the news. But a lot of the folks that were involved with January 6th are still in custody. They're still in prison or in jail, at least. How does that sit with you? Oh, just broke up again.
Yeah, it's possible that we just lost Mark there. It seems to have possibly broken up, although he's moving, but I'm not hearing him.
Mark?
Yeah, we're having some sort of a tech.
I've always thought.
Oh, wait. Back?
Yeah.
Hold on, Mark.
Yeah. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. I was going to say, I've always thought pretrial detention. I made this argument 2 weeks ago, and a judge actually agreed. The idea of pretrial detention runs against the presumption of innocence. If you're presumed innocent, then I don't understand how you get detained on no bail. And to me, the two concepts are not reconcilable. I will tell you, however, speaking of January 6th, people have been wondering, and there was a referral, I believe, yesterday by the January 6th committee. Number one, Mark Meadows, who was Trump's chief of staff, was referred almost 3 months ago to the Department of Justice, has not been filed on. They had referred earlier Steve Bannon to the Department of Justice. He was filed on. And now they've referred 2 other guys. I think it was Dan Scavino and Peter Navarro for prosecution. I don't think, I could be wrong. I don't think the Department of Justice is in any hurry to file criminal contempt on either Mark Meadows, former congressman and chief of staff of Trump, Dan Scavino, or Peter Navarro, all 3 of whom worked in the White House, all 3 of whom are claiming executive privilege. The Department of Justice, I think rightfully, is saying, hey, this is a different situation than Steve Bannon, who was not in government at the time, and his communications with Trump don't have that same cloak of executive privilege. I think these three referrals basically shouldn't go anywhere, and I think that's one of the reasons people are perplexed as to why, at least with Meadows, they haven't filed criminal charges, whereas with Bannon they did. And circling back to answer your question again, I just think that pretrial detention should only be used in the rarest of circumstances. It should not be uniformly used, and like I said, seems to be completely at odds with the presumption of innocence.
All right, Mark, we'll leave it at that. We know you're making a flight. You're going to have a lot of news for us about these meetings in Denver, so we're all waiting with bated breath for that. We'll let you get back to that. I can be seen at, there's Barrel Man. You can go to adamcarolla.com for all my live shows. And until next time, this is Adam Carolla for Mark Garagos saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.